Okay, I can start my video, but it'll just be looking like me staring at a different screen. All right, so hi, this is Jeff, everyone. So what I thought I would do today is talk a little bit, whenever I do these classes, I get a lot of questions on just formatting and things, and how do you create stuff like that. So I thought today I would take a kind of a sort of a real world example. And so Marianne, I asked her to give me an example. She sent me this file, and I guess I should pause. Everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, and Marianne, feel free to jump in if you say, so this is what I said. Do you have an example of something that you would like to clean up or add some logic to? So this is the file, and not to share your file, but we're just going to show this as an overview. So she has a file which she uses for the various events at the OPC, and there's different categories, different dates, different examples on this, and what Marianne said, well, it'd be nice to have this all kind of together and maybe have some metrics on it so that we can see how many people attended and what's popular, what's not popular, how much it costs, and things like that. So I'm not saying what I did answers all those questions, but nonetheless, I thought it was a good example to use to kind of illustrate how you do some things to do formatting and also to set up so that you can do data analysis. So what I'm going to do is I put a little bit of time into creating something. So let me show you what I created. But then what we're going to do is start from scratch and kind of recreate this from scratch. So this will be the end product, and I kind of like to do this sometimes to show what the end product's going to be, and then we'll go through the step-by-steps how to create it. So usually what you want to do to make something a little better for data analysis is make it flat. So in other words, in the file we just saw, there was a separate tab for every event, so it was kind of difficult to put all that data together. So what we're going to do is, it's called flattening it. So we're going to flatten it down into one sheet, and it's going to be a summary of all the events, and we're going to have some master data so that there's various categories, so that like if I add another one and say new event, it's going to say, no, you can't allow, I have it set up so you can't allow to do it. Or maybe what I would do is say travel, but let's say I misspell it, TRVL. Again, it'll tell me I can't do that because I want it to only stick to the categories I defined. So I'll show you how to do that. Some description, the date, and then we're going to calculate the month and the year, and we're going to calculate the days to the event, so that whenever I open this file, if I open this file tomorrow, it's going to be smart enough to tell me this event's 4 days away. If I open it in 3 days, it's going to be smart enough to tell me it's 2 days. So we'll do that, where I made up some stuff, where it's being held, all this data I made up. Who owns it? What are we charging? And some little nifty graphics. So if I put in $50, oops, $85, it'll go in and adjust all the scales. If I put in $5, so all these automatically adjust. You know, how much does it cost, Marianne, to put it on? Other information you want. What's the capacity? How many does she hope to get to attend? And then once it's past due, how many did attend? So, and I think it looks nice. It all's automated. It's robust. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. And then there's also, we probably won't get to this today, but there's also a task, event task. So she could say, well, here's some tasks that I have to do. And this can be a running list. When's it due? And again, it'll tell you how many days till it's due, and then you'll put in data as to when it's complete, and so you can keep this. Now, this is just raw data. The last thing I'll show you before we actually start to do something is there's a tab called metrics. That this is all things that automatically update based on the data. So she could see, well, maybe I have 12 movie nights, let's sum them all up. How many people attend, and again, all this data I made up. So, but this 18 is pulled from all this data. So if I made this movie night, if I said 18 people for this movie, let's pick a different one where there's multiple. let's pick let's see here. I have multiple OUs. So let's say this OU here was 7, and let's make that a big number so I can tell the difference. 50 people attended. When I go back here to the metrics and refresh this, it automatically updates this. So this is all live data based on what the events. And so you could see how many people attended. You could have another one that's set up and pulls from that data. Well, how much money did I spend to put it on? Here's all my open tasks. Show me any task that is not yet complete. How many days till the due date? This one's past due, and what I have to do, and all that. The point is not that this is exactly what she wants. The point is you set up the data, make it look nice, and then you can set up tables that summarize all that data and give you the analysis. So that's what I thought we would create. And again, that's the finished product. And my plan was today is to open up a brand new file, which I have here, which is completely blank, and let's start creating it. Any questions, comments? You can yell at me or you can type in something, whatever's easiest.
Is this Excel 365?
Yeah, it is actually. Good question. So yeah, I subscribe to Excel 365. Yep.
Isn't that the only way you can do it these days?
Unless you still own, it's basically the same as Excel 2016. If you still own that, it would work. But I think for new product, you're exactly right. It's pretty much the way it is these days.
Subscription, right?
Yep. I think I pay 65 a year, 71 a year, something like that. $60 to $70 a year.
That rings a bell.
Yep. So, and not that it matters, but I will tell you if it's, they've done some things that are really, really nice features in Excel 365, but you have, if you are working like I do, I'm a former automotive guy, I do consulting now, and the company I was just working with, they had very old version of Excel, and a lot of the stuff that I was doing for them, they couldn't open. So I had to go in, and you have to be a little careful when you do some of the formulas because Excel 365 lets you do a lot of stuff that's not compatible with the old one. I'm sure they did that on purpose, but. Okay, so let's just stop. So let's go back to, and I don't, unfortunately, if I go screen to screen, I have to remember to keep resharing my screen because you won't be able to see it. So let's go back to this, and we'll start from scratch. So Marianne had different events: travel, OU, rewired, vet connect across the bottom of the screen, and a separate tab for each event. So what I'd like to do is start at, now I have to go back and reshare this. What I'd like to do is, let me do something else here. I don't think this will screw you up. Okay, so let's start by a new screen, and what I want to do is create the flat file. We'll make it look pretty later. We'll get the data in. So the first thing I said, and let's just call it the event, and I called it the category. So this is where it's OU, Vet Connect, or whatever. And what I want to do is put some data in here, but I'm making this look, I'm sorry for this. I'm trying to make it look so on my screen. I'm using 2 monitors, so it looks on my screen okay. So I don't want the user to be able to just pick anything here. I want to have special events that do this. So I'm going to make a, I always call it master data, and let's just make up some events here. So we'll just put some in, and then I'll show you how to set this up so that people can only select things on this list. So we'll have travel, OU, rewired, vet connect, what else? There was movies, Wayne State, doesn't matter. So you can make this as big or as little as you want, and then what I can do is come over here, and right now I can type anything here, but I don't want to be able to do that. I want to force people to select that, and I want to give them the option so they don't have to type. So I'm going to take a bunch of cells, and this is a nice little feature under data called data validation. So along your menu, if you go data validation, and you can put in numbers that you can list, or I'm going to say only pick from that list. So let me show you what I'm going to do, then I'm going to go back and do it slower. So I'm going to pick this list of information and say, do only allow that. But in addition to only allowing that, what I just also did is I gave them a nice little drop down where now you can select, I'll make this a little bigger for you. You can select whatever one you want. On the other hand, if I try to write, I can't remember, it's movie or theater, it won't let me pick anything that I don't select. So that way I keep the data nice and clean when I summarize it. So let's go back and see how I did that again. So if you want to have, it's called data validation, where you allow them to have a drop-down menu. It's under the data menu, data validation, so cord to middle data validation. And then the key is I always use this. There's many things you can pick down and you can say it has to be a number or a decimal, but typically what you're doing is a list, and then to tell it the list of information, pretty much standard Excel, you click on the arrow and then you just highlight in the sheet whatever you want. So if I had a list of 40 things, I could highlight whatever I want. If I want to go back, so let's say I go back and I add another event to this, and I say now I want to add singing. I don't know. I could go back to this master data. Again, data, my validation list, and now just extend that and say okay. And now when I go back to my list, I will see singing, which I just added. So that was the first step. We had category. And we'll make this look pretty later. I would always suggest when you're doing things, you get the data in, and then we'll make it look pretty later. So event, and that would just be, okay, so it's in the travel. Let's just pick a few of these that connect, so that, you know, this might be dogs.
So data validation is case sensitive?
It is, that's a good question. Let's find out. My guess is it is not case sensitive, but we will find out. So yeah, I typed in a small v and it was smart enough to validate it with whatever I had in the master data. That was a really good question. No, I didn't know the answer. My guess is there's probably a way to make it cap sensitive, but the default is no.
I'm surprised.
I would have probably, yeah. So anyway, yeah, good question though. I never really thought about that. So we could, professor meet and greet. Okay, so let's just add some more rows. I intentionally wanted to make that a little long because I want to show something in a little bit. Event date. And oops, event date. So let's just make this July 3rd, 2020. And I'm intentionally doing this because I want to show something in a minute. Okay, so I didn't enter a couple. Let's just repeat this. I'm doing this just in the interest of doing things quick. So I got various dates in here, but they don't look the same. So I said we'll make it look pretty, but let's do a couple. Let's just start to format this. So I'm going to say this row is always going to be a date. If I'm on my home screen, this is you can always right click and get a lot of options and format it, but I'm gonna do mostly shortcuts because I think that's the most interesting. In the middle of the screen, there's something here in the ribbon called number, and you see it's set to general. If I pull it down, I get a whole bunch of options, and if I look on the one that says date, It's going to make all these dates the same. It's going to format these all to dates. So if I put in a number, it's going to always force it to a date. And what happens is it knows the date as a serial number. So that's why it took that number and put it in a nonsense. It's what I'm always going to show you is it's going to format to a date. It's always going to be month, day, year. I can make it do different things, but I formatted this to a date. So now I'm going to enter it in a date. So what you want to do is you don't want to make people enter the month, because now I want to know event month and event year so that I can keep track of this forever and ever. But I hate to make someone now type 7 or July, so let's just calculate it. So there's a lot of formulas in Excel, of course, and some of them are complex, some of them are really easy to use. This one's really easy to use. And the way you do a formula is there's many, many ways. I can insert a formula, but the easiest way is to just type equals. Whenever you type equals, it knows in Excel that you're going to be typing a formula. So again, I can teach this different ways, but today, for the fun of it, I'm going to focus on the shortest way to do it. You can always right-click, insert formulas. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a whole formulas bar up here, I should mention. Some people do that, where you can insert a function and you see it type what you want to do and it will find it. So I could type month and it's going to say, aha, there it is, month. And then what's the serial number? I just mentioned that it takes the name as a serial number. So you could do that. What I like to do is you type equals. I want to know month of something. I can probably guess Excel's pretty smart. I'll call it month, and you can see it actually comes up with help and tells you month, returns the month, a number from 1 to 12. So if I hit month and a parentheses, it says the only argument serial number. I click on that, and it's smart enough to do that. Now I hate to keep typing that over and over, so I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. Always in Excel, when you see a little green square at the bottom right, that means you can click and drag that. So I'm going to drag that down, and it's just going to take that. And you see I went month of C3. The next one, it's going to be smart enough to go C4, C5. So it automatically did that. Another trick I'll show you is, let's say I do the first one. I did month of that, and I want the whole row to be that. For as much data I have, all I have to do is double click on that little green box right there, and it will fill out everything. If I had 200, it would fill out 200. So event year, we'll do this 2 ways again. I can go to formulas, insert function, and I want to know year. So I'll say year. There it is. And select this, select the serial number, which is the date, and it will tell me the year. Or I could say equals year and then do it that way. Again, fill it out. Let's just double click on the square and I fill it out. So now I know this. If I change the date here till January 15th, 2021, obviously it's going to update to, that's in January of 2021. And the reason I want to know the month and the year, so that when I do summaries, I can see if I want to know how many events, how many people, later on, I want to know how many people attended all events in August. Now I can do that. I have a way to filter on or just look at that.
Is there a day of the week?
It does have a day of the week, I believe. I don't know. I've never used that. Day. Let's see here. Day. So I think it does. So let's just day of the week. Let's see what happens. So equals day. Click on the date. So third day of the week. So let's see, what's today's date is 8/10. So let's make this 8/11/2020. So that should be a Tuesday. Oh, it's day of the month. It looks like, wait, looks like that's day of the month.
Yep.
It should be able to tell me it's a Tuesday. Hold on a second. Let me look at something. I've never done this. I do appreciate getting questions. I don't know though. I like that.
See, there's a function that returns a number 1 to 7, and you can convert that to text
Okay.
with a choose command, or I forget the other one. But you had to do it in a roundabout way. I was just wondering if in 365 that they built it in.
There is a weekday here. What does that do? So weekday. So Tuesday, if that's a Tuesday, let me make that a Wednesday. So it goes Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So it looks like there is a function called, it doesn't give you the day, but it gives you the number 1 to 7.
Right.
And then you can write it, like you said, a choose function where you give it a list of things depending on what it does. And you can if you want a week, oh, okay, look, this is also neat. If you want it to start on they do have an option where is if you want it to start on a Monday instead of you can choose whether it starts on a Sunday or a Monday, I guess. So if you want the week to start on a Monday, you do that. So if it starts on a Sunday, if you put a 1, and a Monday, if you put a 2. Yep, so there. Okay, yeah. Okay. So let's do something a little interesting now. Let me jump ahead a little bit. Here's one I like is I use a lot for various things. So days to the event. So a nice function in Excel called today gives you today's date. So if I put equals today, let's just put equals today. It will give me today's date, which isn't very interesting, but if I do today's date minus when the event is, oops, why don't I do it the other way around, huh? The event minus today's date. Let's see, the event C2 minus today. Okay, so this is giving me nonsense because of the way it's formatted. So it thinks that's a date, but what I want that to do is I'm subtracting 2 dates and I want it to be a number. So let's go back to how I format that. And when I make that a number, it's gonna make it a raw number between the 2 instead of a date, trying to force it into a date format. And I don't care about decimal places. So I made it a number and I'm going to say get rid of decimal places, which is if I highlight this, it's getting rid of decimal places, decrease decimal. So I can say 38 days and I did it in that order so I could say it's in the past. So I could do that. How many days to the event? So 158 to this one in January. And what I thought I would do is just illustrate how to make this a little more interesting. Maybe what I want to do is say, instead of it's negative 38, maybe what I want to do is say, well, you know what, if it's in the past, let's just say it's a past event. So not to make this too complicated, but it's also kind of interesting. I could do an if statement. So let's just look at what an if statement does first. So formulas, insert function, if. So if I look at an if, what it does is it does a test, so is something bigger than this? Is something less than this? And then, okay, if the value is true, I can do something. If the value is false, I can do something, okay? So what I can do is, instead of making this just a days to event, I could make it an if statement and say, if So if this number, C2 minus today, is less than 0, so all I did is, remember that was negative 38. All I said is I want you to do that math. And if it's less than 0, I want you to say past event. If it's greater than 0, give me the number. So then say C2 minus today. So I'm going to take this formula and repeat it now. So all I did is I double clicked on that, and let's just make another one in the past, June 30th, 2019, and it will say past event. So again, all I did is I showed you how to do two formulas together. So a little if statement, if whatever the event date is minus today is less than 0, say past event. If it's not less than 0, tell me C2 minus today. So give me the number of days to the event. All right. So let's go on and let's do something else interesting. So I did have more data in here, like venue and owner, and that's not very interesting. But let's do some things where I can show some things: attendee fee and cost. So let's just say Marianne wanted to enter the data. Well, first of all, let's do something else. So I did this on purpose where you can see a bunch of my categories, and probably most people know that both these things, most people maybe know that I'm going to say, you could put your cursor on the right border of any column and drag it to make it bigger. So I could do that to make it fit. Okay, or let's go back to where I was, or you can put your cursor on the right column, and now I'm going to double click, and Excel will automatically fit it. Or what you can do is, let's make a couple of these screwed up. If you have a big cell, if you have a big sheet with all kinds of stuff, if I click this box in the top left with the triangle in it, that selects the whole sheet. So it's up here in the top left, select the whole sheet. Now, if I double click on any column, it fits the whole column to size. So every cell, so day of the week. Okay, now this column screwed up. I'm going to select the whole cell. Well, let me make this. I'm going to select the whole cell, double click on any column, it doesn't matter which one, and it spreads everything out. Let's make it look a little better so that I distinguish the headers. So show you some things. If I may not want to show all the grid lines in Excel, so oftentimes I go view, so it's on the view screen. You can turn off the grid lines, so show grids or don't show grids. So turn off the grid lines. Now I'm not forced to have all the grids that Excel wants. I can create whatever I want. So I'll talked about this before. On the home screen, there's the bucket of paint that I can fill this. So I'm going to fill this, make this bold. So I made the header bold. I'm going to underline it, or not underline it. I'm going to put borders on the bottom of it. Now, when I made it bold, some of my columns aren't long enough anymore. So remember, select all, double click, and it will space them out. This days to the event looks pretty goofy because I got some that are right justified and some that are less justified. So let's just split the difference. I'm going to make this column center. So on my home screen, you have three buttons here: left justify, center, right justify. I'm going to center that. So I highlight. So again, I clicked on H, click on G, highlight everything in G, click on the center button. I can center it. I can go right, I can go left. I'll keep it centered. Similar thing, just to illustrate. Let's say I had one cell that was really long. I could click on this cell and I could have it be at the bottom, the middle, or the top. Or I could do like I did before, highlight everything, double click on the bottom, and it will fit the height of the cell, height of the row appropriately. So let's enter some data here just to, for the fun of it. Let's say it costs $10, 0, $50, 25, 15, 10, 20. So we have these events, we have different costs. I'm going to center this data so it looks a little better. We have a fee. Now I could say is, well, that's just a bunch of numbers that are hard to visualize. So Excel has conditional, it's a type of conditional formatting. I could highlight these, and on the home screen, on the home, there's a conditional formatting, and not often used, but it's been around in Excel for a while, and they've improved it a lot lately. There's ways that I can do different things with the cell depending on the data that's in it. So what I'm going to do is data bars, and I'm going to pick this is just different colors: purple, blue, green, whatever. Let's pick red. And now it makes a data bar in the cell proportional to the data. So if I take that 50 and make it 100, it's going to now make that, it's the biggest piece of data, go all the way across, and everything else will be scaled accordingly. If I make this 30, now 30 is the biggest and 25 scaled. So it would be a way, if you had a lot of data in a cell, it's a nice visual way to see, well, draw your eye to what's the biggest one without having to go in and do charts and tables and things like that. Let's put some costs in. So Marianne has some costs to put these on: 300, 150, 75, 50, 125, 190. So similar, we could do things here to make this look nice. So again, I'm going to click on the column J. I'm going to center it, make it look a little nicer. This one, now what I'm going to do, well, I won't ruin my train of thought. Let's look at the conditional formatting, then I'll do something else in a minute. So you saw, in addition to data bars, there's icon sets where I could go in and have it code up what it thinks are, I could tell it highest or lowest. So it's going to put green on the highest, red on the lowest. I could reverse that. I can have it draw different, oops, I just did the same thing again, I think. Different indicators, flags. I could do little cell phone where, okay, the biggest numbers have the most bars. So there's lots of inherent little things. I can even do both. So I have the bars. I don't know why you do this, but I have the bars and that. So again, just a nice way to add some color, add some information to your sheet without doing any work. So the thing I wanted to say is these are numbers right now. I'm sorry, these are dollars, but they kind of look like numbers. So what I would probably suggest is going up here into general, and instead of making them general, you can make them currency, and that'll make them dollars. And I typically, for something like this, you probably don't need the dollars and cents. So you could make that be, have the dollar sign in front of it, so it looks a little better. And I'm a little anal retentive, so I'm going to make this, get rid of that. Okay. All right, so let's go back to making this data bars blue and make this, again, currency. And get rid of the dollars and cents by doing that. I could add more decimals if I wanted to, but for something simple like that. So let's see if there's anything else. So what we could do is, and then I did a similar thing where I have, you could add targeted participants, actual participants. And then I want to show one more thing that will be a little, so I could fit this by double clicking on that particular column, or again, when in doubt, always select everything, pick any row, double click, and it will space out everything. But sometimes I like I like to make things a little bigger. So let's just add some numbers here: 50, 40, 30, 20, 20, 30, 15, and some actual participants, 7. Okay, so I'm gonna center these as I've done with so many. Click on the box, and I'm gonna put a border under. Oh, here's something I want to say. So you notice, let me do something and then show you something. Okay, so if you haven't used this before, so let's just say I was creating this and I added 2 more columns, but now my headers don't look quite right. One of the most useful things, if you haven't used it before, is this little format painter with the paintbrush. So what it does is allows you to copy just the formatting. So it doesn't drag formulas. All it does is take the formatting. So all I say is I want these 2 headers to look just like this one. So let's click on cost and take the format painter and highlight those cells, and it makes them. So in other words, let's just say I had this left justified, just to show you it does everything, and I'll make this a little bigger so we can tell the difference. Right now, as you remember, I centered these. I would say format painter, paint those 2, and now they're left justified. Whatever this is, whatever color it is, whatever borders I put on it, I put a thick outside border, whatever I do, format painter, it's gonna do it. So I have, it's a nice way to get the data in and then quickly make everything look right.
Can I ask you a question on that one?
Sure.
So when you use the format painter, if you make a change in that first one, does it automatically update your other ones?
No, it does not.
No, you have to do it again. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so now let's just say, and this is, we'll get to probably the more complicated thing I'll do today, and it may or may not be interesting, but it's powerful, so I want to show it. So let's say we get all this data in here and we have a big cell, and then we want to set up some master data. So we want to know how many events am I targeting for all of these things. So let me I really should create some more master data here. Singing. So we got event dates, December 15th, 2020, 1/1/2021. And it doesn't matter what order I put things in, obviously. So I put in some more data. You can see I didn't have this down far enough, so my days to the event, I didn't pull that down, so I'm going to extend that, double click on that, and it'll fill that in. Let's do some, just to get some data in here. Okay, so this is a good example how you would use the format painter. I want these bars, I want it to look like that. I'm going to highlight those 2 and say I want all this data to look like that, and I can do it all at once. So it formatted it just like whatever's above it, retained the color and everything. And let me just type some data in here, then we'll do something kind of interesting. 25, 30, 15, 15, 20. Okay, so now I want to know some information on how many people are attending these. And let me just, so it's a little more interesting, make a couple more of these in the past. Okay, so I made, how about half of them in the past, half of them now. So a very powerful tool, and I apologize, it's not the easiest thing, but it's powerful. So I want to show it. It's called pivot tables and pivot charts. So what it takes is all this data. So what I could do is I could go in and say, let me digress. If I wanted to look at all of the past events, I could, on my home screen, I could filter it. So on my home screen, if I go out to this little funnel, I could say I want to have filters. And then I could say, just show me the things that are past event. So these show all the past events, and I could come over here and I could add those up, and I had 47 people attend my events, and I could look at this and say 25 were VetConnect and 22 were OU. And I could do that one by one and do this. But what a pivot table does is it basically allows you to take all your data and assume I have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of lines, and I can basically filter it any way I want. So let's just do it. I like to do things, and then I'll go back and do it a little slower and explain what I did. So first of all, let me turn off this filtering so it doesn't distract us. I'm gonna select and highlight all the data, and I'm gonna go to Insert, because I'm going to create something new, and it's under Insert, and I could do a pivot table, and a pivot table is just going to do the analysis, but what I want to show here is something called a pivot chart. So we'll insert a pivot chart, and it'll say, well, what do you want to do a pivot chart of? And I already had it selected, so it was smart enough to say, okay, what you selected, and I'll put it on a new worksheet. So it's that simple. Now I created this pivot chart, which doesn't look very interesting, but what it's allowing me to do is look at anything. So I could say things like, let's just actual participant. Let me do this and then explain what I did. Event and then days to event. So this automatically computes a chart based on basically any filter event that I select. So I'm going to make this chart, again, I'll go back through this a little slower, make it look a little prettier. But what this would do is I said to based on any event. And so if you go back to my data, I did it on any event, and you see I didn't put in too much data, and I'll fix this in a minute because I didn't really mean to do that. So most of them are blank. How many people attended? It puts a chart. So if I would go back and change that data, trust me, this would change. And you say, what value is this? Because this is nothing more than an Excel chart that you just did in a complicated manner. The nice thing is I can, without going back and recreating a chart, I can do something different. So honest to God, I made a mistake. I meant to graph category, not event. So I can go over here and say, what I really meant was I want you to graph category. I didn't want event. And now I can see that. And what I really want to do is not have everything. I just want to look at the past events. So now these are the events that occurred in the past. And if you remember, the numbers we saw were 22 and 25. And I have this way to do it. Maybe I'd want to go into my chart and say, just look at, show me this by month. So this is to show, well, let's just do it by year. That might be a little more interesting. So I could say by year, show me how many I had. So I put one of these dates in the past, 2019, and I can quickly redo this chart. Maybe I would want to say, well, really what I'd like to see is all the VetConnects together and then the year broken out below it. I can change the pivot chart and swap that order, where now it says OU in 2020, and now in VetConnect I had whatever that total is, 15 last year and 10 this year. So it's a way to create a chart in Excel that I can change on the fly without having to go back and recreate new charts. So let's go back to my original table, and I'm going to start winding down here. So if I go back to what I originally created, now that I explained how I did things a little better, let's drag this over to my other screen. So this is the file I originally just created, basically what I just kind of recreated here. So we had a dummy data, I put it in. I didn't show my grid line, so again, view grid lines, I took off. I made it all borders. I did borders everywhere so that it looks nice, but my rest of my sheet doesn't distract me. Different fees, I put in if it's past event. And now on my metrics page, same thing. I have it set up where I did multiple pivot charts, so I can go in and see, okay, for my past events, how many people participated in my different things. I could say how much did it cost. So I created a pivot chart here where it's different categories for the different categories of how much did we spend on putting that on. I can change this so that I would say maybe I only want to show.
I'm only seeing the event summary.
Uh-oh, what do you? Oh, my screen sharing paused. Sorry about that. What happened? Screen share, OPC formatting, share. Okay. So you're seeing it now, Marianne? Okay. So you're
Yes, we're
seeing,
fine.
so you can put multiple pivot charts where you have, again, different things so that as the data is updated, the only thing that when you do pivot charts, if the data changes on this page, you have to come in and you have to refresh the data. But that's an exercise for a different topic. So my kind of summary, I think I try to keep these things to an hour, so I'm going to wrap down. Here's what I would say. My advice: if you're creating a formatting thing, you want to keep your data flat. So in other words, keep as much of your data on one screen and set up different columns to represent the different fields of the data that you want to sort on. If you put data in a bunch of different tabs that you want to analyze across, it's very difficult. It can be done, but it's much more difficult. So keep your data, it's called, as flat as possible. So what I did is I set up one that is kind of the summary of the data and one tab that is just the tasks that have to be done. And maybe next time I do one of these, I'll go through and talk about this a little more. We talked about how the data validation can be set up so that the key data you want to validate with lists, so you keep control of what's put in there and you don't have travel misspelled, all kinds of stuff. Talked about how we can use the conditional formatting data bars to make numbers look good and give you little graphic indicators of what are the biggest and smallest numbers. If you want to set up all your column widths to be exactly proportional to the data that's in it, highlight everything, double click on any cell, and it will change everything to the minimum column width, but make sure you can see everything. Talked about the format painter. So you could, if these were all screwed up for whatever reason, bold, italics, red font. So these are all screwed up, but I say, well, I want all this stuff to look like this, but I don't want to screw up all these numbers, format painter. So I can quickly make things look good without having to go through cell by cell. Now, when I just did that, what I just did is said, this is the number, and you see I screwed up my dates here. So obviously you have to think a little bit. This is how Excel represents dates. And if you remember, what I did is I came up here and said short date. So that's a lot to cram into 45, 50 minutes. But maybe there's a couple or three things that are useful to you that you can take away. So I guess I'll pause. Any questions, comments?
That was really helpful.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
I have a comment.
yeah,
Go ahead.
Can you go back to the worksheet you developed?
sure. Okay,
Okay, you did a format painter on the attendee fee and cost on the last 3 rows.
yeah,
Now look at the size of, let's say, the last row, the 30 in red.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about. The
It's the
300 and
same
no
as
one.
the 50 because
Mhm.
you, it made a separate grouping of those 3 rows.
It did. You're right. It did. Very good.
Can you explain that to me? Because I didn't do
Yeah. So what happened is very good. I guess you don't want to do Format Painter on that. So what happened is when I essentially I click on those, and let's just say I did a conditional formatting data bars here. So it did these 5 individually. So in other
Mhm.
words, the 190 filled up the full cell,
Okay. So you got to
and
do the
it's the same.
whole thing.
Yeah,
Good.
you gotta do the whole thing. Yeah, very good.
Good idea, yes.
Super
Good
catch.
catch, Dennis.
Yeah, super.
And that one has the 50 and the 30. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I've been using Excel 2013 and it doesn't have these that I can recall, these data bars. I like this.
Yeah, I do too.
And the data validation, I'm going to make use of that a lot in the future.
Yeah, I think the one thing 13, and I don't like it as well, but I believe you have it called spark lines, which was kind of the precursor to these data bars.
Yeah.
And there's a spark line. You can set up a blank column. I don't even know if spark lines is in mine. You can set up a blank column next to it, and if you can look at it, and then you can make a spark line, which is a little mini chart within this cell based on whatever data you tell it to.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't say that well, but it's somewhere, and here they are, spark lines. I can't really remember what they are, but it's, so the data range, oh, yeah, I don't remember how to use them, but sparkline is kind of the precursor to these things. I don't remember quite how they're used.
Interesting.
So, okay.
All right. Well, have a great day. Tell Christina it was good to hear her voice.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks.
All right. Have a
All right,
great day,
bye-bye.
everybody. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
See you later, Dennis. Hey,
Yep.
Dennis.
Yeah.
You got a second? We're the only ones on here.
Yep.
So, Richard just sent that out. So do you have 2 seconds? I'm just gonna go check the totals, and then we can add your lady friend.
Yeah, I saw his email.
Yeah, hang on. Let me see if anybody signed up. So yeah, so go ahead and for non-members it's $5.
Okay.
Okay. So what's her name?
Margie Cosmo, Cosmo.
Okay. I'll see you then.
So is it okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Just bring $5 with you and I'll turn it in.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. See you later, Dennis.